I am excited to talk about stabbing. I'm very excited to talk about stabbing because I wonder if YouTube is going to smush it in the algorithm, because that's definitely, I can see how that would be a trigger word for the old algorithm. But I'm finally talking about stabbing. I've been meaning to for a long time, but there's always a bunch of stuff to do, and people have been asking me to talk about stabbing for a while. Here on the channel, I do vocal analysis. I'm a full-time vocal coach, work 6 days a week, teaching people how to go safely and efficiently so they don't, hurt their voices and they can have great metal careers. And I love doing vocal analysis here, especially on genres a little bit outside of deathcore. Deathcore is where there's a lot to talk about, but other genres have other merits too. And what a band name, Stabbing. I love it. I love a band that knows how to name stuff. Sanguisugabog, some of the best track titles. Cryptopsy, right? None So Vile. Well, that's maybe one of the best album names ever, right? So, band name like Stabbing, I'm immediately interested. I technically have heard a little bit like years and years and years ago, but I don't remember it. A lot of people, so is this a first time listen? You decide. Let's check out Inhuman Torture Chamber. I love it. I love it. Here we go. Whoa. Y'all, this is some death metal. This is some death metal. Like, maybe it wasn't Stabbing that I heard a while ago. We used to do live streams long time ago, and I thought that I had listened to this band, but I remember a much slammier sound. This is, to me, you let me know, because I get genres mixed up all the time. To me, this is like very death metal. It ain't trying to be anything else. And a lot of that is coming from the vocals, right? So I'm not going to, I like to do vocal analysis a little bit spread out, but I want to talk about a couple of the main things that I hear that are so uniquely death metal, right? Because I think a lot of people, if you showed them this, they would be like, oh yeah, those are death metal vocals. But what makes them death metal vocals, right? Common things in death metal vocals that I'm hearing here that she is doing really, really well. Okay. First and foremost is this holding of space. Right? This holding of just lots of space in the mouth. One thing we can do, this is super common, is we can do like a big yawn. Right? That's going to open everything up. That's going to create a lot of resonant space. And we'll talk more about it later. But that's how we're going to get these tones super low, right? The second thing is, for being called metal screams, a lot of these lower tones don't feel like you're screaming, like this full body, excessive force, pushing as hard as you can. A lot of these vocals actually aren't that much louder than your speaking voice, right? And the reason for that is because we want slower rates of distortion. And for things to distort slower, generally they need to be looser and, not moving as fast, right? Duh, Mark, that's what slow means, but you get the idea, right? We want slower vibrations so we can get a good basis for lower sounds, right? So those are some of the things that I'm hearing here. I want to listen a little bit more so I can dig into the technique a little bit more, but so far this is sick. So far this, if you want some death metal, here's some death metal, folks. I know I'm pausing again, but we got to talk about that articulation. So one criticism a lot of metal vocals get, especially in the death metal world, from non-death metal people, is you can't understand what they're saying. I did a whole mini video essay on this years ago that basically said, I don't care. Like, listen, if you want somebody who's going to be like, oh, you have to understand the lyrics, I'm not your guy. I don't give a crap about that, right? It doesn't matter to me. But you can, and part of the fun and part of a way that we can understand the genre-specific markers of a genre is learning how to understand. So right here, did I understand everything she said up to this point? No, but you can hear her say Inhuman Torture Chamber. And I want to talk about that, right? Because a lot of what makes metal vocalization sound good is the way that we articulate and deliver the tone, not just the way that we generate the tone, not just the way that we generate the tone, right? A good example is a lot of my low screams sound like this. Right? That's how I do a lot of my lows. But if I take away all the shaping, it actually doesn't sound very cool. Like, that's not that neat, but now it sounds better. So listen, I'm going to point it out to you. Inhuman torture chamber. Check it out. Inhuman torture chamber. Right? This is a very, very, very good example of how these vocals are made low, right? There's a reason. Now listen, I wasn't there when she was writing her vocal parts, but there is a reason why you would pronounce it this way, is because we need lots of space to create super low tones the vast majority of the time. The way that these tones get lower is we hold the sound waves in our mouth longer, right? You ever thought about that? Like when we pucker our lips, our vocal tract, oh no, do I have a crumb in my mustache? Am I a barbarian? Whatever. When I pucker my lips, my vocal tract is legitimately getting longer. Oh, and then I drop my jaw. Oh, I've created a big cavern. I've created basically a big cave. A large jar with a tiny little opening. So what's going to happen is the sound waves are going to bounce around in there and stay in there longer. And by the time they escape, they're going to be stretched. They're going to sound deeper, right? So what if then I keep them in my mouth longer by curling my tongue up? So now some of the sound waves are going to bounce off the back of my tongue. Bop, 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 bop. Just rattle around inside that chamber. A little bit of a larynx drop. If I do the same thing with distortion, right now what I'm doing here is I'm sort of taking the tissues above my throat, pushing them together kind of hard and tilting my epiglottis back. So it's like an arytenoidal closure motion and an epiglottal tilt motion. That's how I'm doing it, which is where you get like this orc noise, right? So I take that, there you go. That's how I do it, right? Let's layer these things. So, and you get really cool low tones, right? There are also some interesting variations in the rate of her distortion, which we can use to talk about airflow. But so far, like the pronunciation of these words necessitates, or I should say facilitates, that's what I was looking for, facilitates deeper tones, right? And this is something that's really important. This is a sound that for a lot of people is going to be harder to do right off the bat, because you have to make such a inhuman, pun intended, feeling shape with your mouth. And so oftentimes with students who are looking to do something crazy, like I get a student in who they're like, I want to do like these crazy tongue tilted, tunnely, like types of sounds, right? Generally speaking, rather than saying right off the bat, like, okay, here, do this, do this, do this, do this. Here's your checklist for how to make the sound work. What we'll do is we'll just be playful with their voice. We'll do all sorts of sounds to loosen up their vocal tract. We'll tilt, we'll play with tilting the tongue every direction and see what makes the most sense, right? And I actually just released a free course that talks about how to be playful with your voice to find what your voice is most comfortable doing. It's in the comments below. You can check it out. But let's keep going on. Let's keep going on here because I'm hoping for I heard some variations in the rate of distortion, and I really want to talk about the relationship of airflow and tissue rigidity. Let's keep going. I'm sorry, what the hell was that? Was that what the? So that's a weird sound. My initial thought is that it's a tongue roll. And the reason I'm leaning towards that is because tongue rolls are something that are a lot easier for most people to do, right? So it's kind of like an Occam's, I'm probably using this wrong, but it's kind of like an Occam's razor situation. If you hear a sound like that, and the vast majority of people can, or at least can learn fairly easily how to do a tongue, then it's probably it. The reason why, so there have been people, there's this old clip that was going around Facebook like 10 years ago, and it was this guy doing the weirdest, like he called it like a grasshopper vocal, and the way he described it sounded like he was getting like epiglottal clatter. Yeah, it's not a sound I can do. I literally can't. You know, usually with these videos, if I can't do the sound, I'll approximate it for you. Y'all, I gotta be humble. I can't do that. I can't, right? But there are times where you can make your epiglottis or like your soft palate and your tongue do some things, but it's a little tough for me to hear. It's a little tough for me to hear. I want to hear her do it. I want to hear her do it like unaccompanied, like raw. That would be interesting. But part of the reason, there are a couple of reasons I'm leaning towards tongue roll. And if she sees, I think her name is Bridget, I think. If you see this, feel free to correct me in the comments. Feel free to be like, no, idiot, right? You're right, please. But there are a couple things I'm hearing, and this is a very hard thing to hear because I feel like it's very muffly. I'm not saying she was in the studio with a fucking 58. This is actually not an SM58, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So, right, I'm hearing what almost sounds like brr, brr, brr. It sounds like there's like that buh, like literally saying like a brr. Let me listen again. I'm going to try my best. The most I'm going to be able to give you on this sound, just so heads up in this video, is a very confident guess. Yeah, a very good hypothesis. Let's give it. I hear like a brr, brr, brr. And if we listen to the vowel or the formant, it's not a big open sound. We don't have a like the day before this. As of the posting, I did this. I think this video is going to go up this Sunday, which means that when you're watching it, I will have the day before put up a video of the new song, or his first song, Cage Archer and Taylor Barber. And he does this like tongue roll, but it's this very deep. You can listen to the vowel, the shape of the vocal tract underneath. Brr, brr. I'm not even going to try. I can roll my tongue, brr, but I'm hearing more of a closed mouth. Brr. But then again, the shape of her jaw here looks open. I'm gonna listen to it one more time and then we'll move on. We're not gonna spend the whole video here, but this is wild. This is weird. I can't really tell what type of distortion is going on under there. For me, it's very difficult to do a tongue roll with a very low compressed tone. So like this low that I do, I don't even know if I could if I tried. It doesn't hurt, but I can't. I don't think that's it. That doesn't sound right. For me, it's easier to do tongue rolls on more airflow permissive tones, right? And that makes sense too, because we need air to push against the tongue and the tongue to snap back. Air to push against the tongue and the tongue to snap back. So like that's not bad. Or like that I can do. It'd be interesting. Maybe I'll get the chance to chat with her and pick her brain on that. Or there's an interview. If there's an interview with her talking about this, link it in the comments below because I want to know more about it. Let's keep going though. I can't do the whole video on this, but that's a fun one. I like that one. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's just like really muffled. If I do like I'm going to simulate it. I still don't think that's it. Oh. 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 This is sick. So up until about that halfway point, I was like, hell yeah, this is a cool death metal song. I don't know if it's really the thing that I would listen to normally, but it's really, really cool. But that change in the middle, dum dum brrr, dum dum bum. Oh my God. I love that sort of like marching, like dum 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 dum. I love that sound. There are certain sounds in genres that will get me every time. That sort of riff in a death metal or a black, because you hear that sort of stuff in black metal too. Every time I'm gonna love it, no matter what. That's just who I am. But let's take a pause real quick to talk. I'm talking a lot for a 3-minute song, but I can't help it. It's interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the relationship between airflow and tissue rigidity. Okay, so oftentimes in the metal vocal meta, in the metal vocal conversation, we don't talk about tissue rigidity and airflow very directly. Now, this is not going to be one of those stupid fucking videos where it's like, other vocal coaches won't tell you. No, they will. Other vocal coaches will tell you this. This has been talked about before. But it's often, I find, maybe not talked about enough in the overall landscape of metal vocals, right? And that's the relationship between how rigid the tissues are and how they're going to act within airflow. Oftentimes we just kind of call it compression and we leave it there. Add compression, add compression, add compression. Like, what the hell does that mean, right? So that falls under the category of vocal coach vagism, by the way, which, again, I'm not pointing at anybody. I use vocal coach vagisms all the time. And a vocal coach vagism is something that is true, but without context makes no sense and doesn't hold a lot of value. And sometimes you just don't have enough time to go into it. Like, I'm having to become more of a shorts creator. And let me tell you, my God, you can't say anything in 90 seconds. It's so hard to say anything of value in 90 seconds. So I'm not calling anybody out. I get it. So let's talk about it here, right? I am not going to switch techniques. I'm going to use my normal low, but I'm going to change for you right now the amount that I'm closing or tensing the tissue and the amount of airflow that's going through it, right? So here's the baseline sound. If I just find it, hey, this is kind of how I warm up into the sound that I use for similar vocals here. I do like this orc Yoda, work, work. I sort of do this like guttural and my goal is to feel it up in the front. So that's like the bass line, right? What if I do less airflow? All I'm going to change is less airflow. Right? What if I do my best to keep that airflow, but I engage more muscle, right? I take the same muscles that I'm using and I just sort of think about squeezing or flexing them a little bit more, right? Nothing, right? Nothing. What if instead I increase airflow and increase pressure? That's a weird situation. What would that create? So I have this clicking sound. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press a little bit more with my abdomen, and I'm also going to engage this a little bit more. Whoa! You can hear that what happens is that slow clacky distortion, and this is not a representation of the actual tissues. This is just something for you to see. I don't have two epiglottises. I guess I got two arytenoids, maybe. So maybe we could do something like that. Anyway, doesn't matter. So, right. So instead of, this is what it feels like, by the way, this is what it feels like. Instead of going, right? In my mind, those aren't two separate techniques. That's one technique with variations, right? So you can use a lot of airflow and loosen up. You can use, you get what I'm saying. I don't have to show you every variation here, but one thing that I hear with her a very good balance. She's got this really solid sweet spot of airflow and engagement that reduces that sort of clacky sound, but keeps it doesn't turn it into pure TV static. It still has some of that gurgle, some of that texture that I really like. Pair that with a lot of her, like she's doing a lot of her vocals in two vowel shapes, or in two formants is a better word for us to use. Or maybe more of an e. E. A lot of her, not everything, of course, but a lot of it's. It's got a lot of that going on, and I think that sounds really sick. This is a vocalist who has played around with this sweet spot a lot, which, I mean, of course, as a musician, you have to use your instrument all the time. Let's keep going. She had some layered high vocals. I'm hoping to hear those a little bit more in the forefront because they had an extra interesting tone to them. Let's keep going. Oh, yes. You can really hear that balance of and that wasn't a very good sound. I'm gonna leave that in so we all see that we're all human, right? Those two existing, you can hear it on the offset, really nice because the instrumentation kind of goes away a little bit, and you can really hear her texture. Check this out. This is actually really cool. I'm really glad that happened because you can hear exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's like a maybe more around there. She's got some serious control. That's killer. That snare sounds sick. I want to hear some more of that. That snare at the end. Oh my God, that sounds so good. You know, I'm not a drummer by any means, so I could be totally wrong, but those sound like live tracked drums. To me, the hits on the snare are there's too much variation. And I know that when you program drums or when you track them on an electric, like an E kit, and then quantize it and, you know, put your samples in, I know that there are built-in variations, but there's a lot of variation that sounds organic. Also, those snares have sort of like a distant, you can like hear this space between them. I know they mic them up and it's all, but you know what I'm saying, right? I love that like sort of breathe that we get at the end there. Really, really cool. Yeah. Why did I pause in the middle of it? Mark, you idiot. Stupid. How do I know? Let's train your vocal analysis here. So why not, right? We're doing an old video. It's always a gamble. You never know if the algorithm's going to show it to people or not. So let's do something fun. Let's change your vocal analysis here. Why do we know, when you listen to this, why do we know that her airflow is extremely under control? There are a couple good answers. Number one, the distortion's even. Right? Obviously, but there's something else. There's something else that's really impressive, right? Again, I don't know how she tracked this. I don't know. You know, sometimes people, they grab it because they want that raw sound. They grab a 58, they cup the mic and they go, right? What's my opinion on cupping the mic? I don't care. I'm sure there's a right answer and I just don't care what it is. Sorry. I usually just go with whatever the sound guy wants, right? Stop cupping. Okay. Okay. But it's because the word that she used for the brie was like a B, right? What do you call a fly that stings? You call it a bee. But the thing that I hear where I'm like, oh damn, she's she's got control over that opening, right? Those tissues above her vocal folds, they're very closed. She not only can hold an even airflow, but she can control how much air trickles through it and how much air pressure builds up in her mouth. And the reason we know it, here's the answer. Take a couple seconds. Type your answer in the chat below. The B sound. So this sound, ba, is called a bilabial plosive, right? That's the name of the sound. And oftentimes, anybody who's tracked knows that the plosive sounds, b, k, t, p, right? They're a pain in the ass. You don't hear any of that burst. You don't hear any of that burst. It doesn't sound like, I got to lean down on the mic, so it's going to be a little hard to control, but it doesn't sound like, do you hear that? It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like, that's hard. See, but I didn't have that B sound in there. So I pulled back, but it sounded more like me, right? Try that. Try saying like B, but with as little puff as possible. B, 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 B. See that? I pulled it back. That's not the same thing. That was closer. That was closer. Sorry, I'm just having a good time now. That's cool. Listen to that. Listen to how, and it doesn't sound like it was pulled out with like an EQ or something. Maybe it was. Maybe I'm an idiot. But it sounds like there's an organic element to that vocal. Let's check it out. Yeah. Oh, I tried to time it perfectly. So I didn't hear that many of the isolated highs. Maybe she does them more. But that was sick. So, you know, one of the reasons I decided to do this video wasn't just because I haven't done it. And people have been asking, people haven't asked it for a little while, but back when this dropped, a lot of people were saying I should check it out, but was because, you know, sometimes, so I love deathcore. I absolutely love deathcore, but sometimes, you know, even in the metal vocal community, people will say things like, oh, for black metal, all you have to do is, or, oh, for death metal, all you have to do is, but, you know, if you have an ear for it, you can tell there's a lot going on. There's actually a lot to talk about. And sometimes, you know, I can't remember what it was, but I was at or who the artist was, but back in the day when I had free time, I liked to go to the Phoenix Art Museum. I'm not a big like art buff. You get me in a room full of like the most amazing paintings in the world, and I'm just like, that one looks good. I don't like that one. That one's pretty, right? But there's this one painting, and from a distance, it looks like the whole canvas is white. The entire canvas is white. But as you get closer, you can see that it's actually like a lot of different varying shades of gray and varying shades of pink, right? I wish I knew who the artist was. If you know, let me know in the comments below. But the longer you looked at the picture, the more your brain, and it helped to stand at a certain angle, so the light hit it there, you know, that did help, right? But the longer you looked at the painting, the more your brain was able to parse out the colors, and you could see really cool patterns actually. And so that's kind of what the experience of, you know, my favorite metal genre is black metal, right? And I don't talk a lot about black metal on the channel, because it's a minefield of a genre. You find a black metal band that you love, and then you research them, and there's a picture of them like giving the salute, if you know what I mean. You're like, God damn it. So A, it's a minefield of a genre, but also B, you know, people don't have a lot of patience with it. So I'll just be straight up honest, but there's so much variation, and I feel that as well. So I'm really glad I did this song, because there are a lot of moments. There's a lot that we can talk about vocally here. Formants, positioning, relationship between airflow and tissue rigidity, right? The control on the way that the air leaves the mouth on a plosive sound. That's awesome. That's crazy. So I'm a fan. Inhuman Torture Chamber, I'm a fan. I like it. Stabbing, I think I will listen to more. I'll be honest, first half of this, I'm not like a big death metal guy. I have a massive amount of respect for the genre. It's just not usually what I gravitate towards. Although there are those death metal albums that are sick, right? Like if you've never listened to None So Vile, you should check it out. There's some sick sick riffs on that album. Anyway, that's not the band I'm talking about. But I think with this, it does sound like the kind of death metal that I would love to indulge in from time to time. That's it. That's all I got. So to everybody in the band, excellent work. To everybody who watched, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the vocal analysis. Again, if you don't even know how to get started with metal vocals, you're not even like false chord fry. I don't even know what that is. How do I just get my body ready for it? Link in the description and in the pinned comment. How to Scream from Zero is the name of the course. Entirely free, $0. Just preps you for the first steps of your journey. And that's all I got. Many thanks. Much love. I'm out.